Hi, I'm Erin Leach, and you're listening to the In the Middle of It podcast. This is a space for the ambitious woman navigating the beautiful, messy intersection of motherhood, business, and spirituality. We're here to get real about what it actually looks like to build a life that feels aligned from the inside out while moving through the seasons that stretch and shape you into the best version of yourself. So, whether you're in a season of high speed growth or quiet reflection, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Let's get ready for this week's episode.
Hey there, welcome back to the show. I'm really looking forward to this episode and a few more that are coming because I wanted to start the year off with some things that I feel really passionate about that have kind of built this whole coaching business to begin with. And I don't feel like they're really discussed quite as much. So, one of the first things is just all about identity as a mom, and specifically how as moms that we lose our identity, at least the one we had before children, how we go through grieving losing that identity, because that is a very true and very real process. And then how we actually find ourselves again and like redefine our identity for who we are now that we are a mom. I think we take so much time to learn and think about how we're going to care for the baby that we forget to talk about how to take care of the woman who just went through a total reconstruction. And even when we do, it's more like motherhood, baby focused, care for her so she can care for the baby kind of conversation. Like your partner helping you while you're nursing, or something like that. Or it's very much like how to set boundaries in the beginning when you first take your baby home. And it's not so much more like the internal shifts that happen sometimes, but it's definitely not the mainstream conversation for sure. So I've had a lot of conversations in the past maybe year or so, I want to say, with friends or other women in my community, women that I meet through the group coaching programs that I have been a part of, all of that. And a lot of them have shared this feeling of at one point in time in their motherhood journey, feeling very unsettled. And of course, they love being a mom, but there's just like something inside them that they couldn't seem to shake or even identify sometimes. And it's this little like niggle in the back of their mind telling them that there's more that they need in life than just motherhood. Even in my own experience, the times that I got to go out and be a wedding photographer in general, and meeting up with my friends who typically were also photographers, they're absolutely life giving. There's just this something else that you need outside of the four walls that are your home. And given my postpartum experience too, they were actually a necessity. Like without having quote unquote my things to do that were specifically just for Erin, not for Leon's mom, not for Scott's wife, would have actually gone insane, probably. I was on my way in various different forms. So today I want to share three core truths about motherhood and identity that I wish someone had told me as I was preparing to become a mom, because it really was a shell shock. I had Leon and I expected, with adjustments, obviously, but more or less to just go back to who I was before. I just thought, okay, yeah, we're going to like get settled into life and then I'll be Erin again. And I was still Erin, but I was a very different Erin. And I also had a lot of crap to deal with that then made me a whole nother Erin. And no one really talks about these shifts that you go through internally as a way of preparing for being a mother. You think about building your registry and what things do you need and like You're learning about how to care for a newborn, but what about yourself? And again, we care about ourselves physically. You learn all about all the postpartum recovery hacks and all of the supplies and products and everything to use. But what about internally? Like, no one, at least from what I saw, no one was really talking about this specifically. There were some things here and there about like more than mainstream stuff, like baby blues versus postpartum depression and more like very specifically mental health driven things like that. But I don't remember seeing anything that was like, hey, just an FYI, you're going to change a lot and you should probably be ready for it because it's a whirlwind. I got nothing like that. And even, no fault to them, but even my friends who were already moms, I just feel like this isn't the first thing that we think about when we're like, oh my goodness, my friend's having a baby. Let me like share all the things to help support her in this journey. This whole identity part is not the first thing that we think of. It just kind of is something that happens and you learn how to deal with it on your own. Or as you're going through it, then you're confiding in friends and then you kind of get the validation of like, oh yeah, I went through that too, and yada yada. And I was just feeling like, why didn't we talk about this before? Because at least having the like mental preparation that it was coming would have seriously helped the whole process, like knowing that I wasn't going to go back to that Erin. I wasn't going to go back to that version. And the truth is that we're not. If you're preparing to have a baby right now, or if you do have a baby, even a toddler or a young child, like we just have to embrace the fact that the woman that we were before kids is gone, at least in that very specific sense. Obviously, we're still here and we still are who we are. But we live in this culture that's really obsessed, at least in the United States, and not sure about the rest of the world, about bouncing back. You see it a lot more so in like the fitness, health, and wellness realm in terms of your body specifically. But it's even more like insidious when it comes to our actual minds. And people ask, when you going to get back to yourself? Or, a variation of that kind of question. As if that old self is just like chilling in a closet or something somewhere and you got to like go dig her out of storage. That's just not how it happens because we're always changing. So it just feels so silly to me. It reminds me of this comic that I'm sure a lot of you have seen, that there's a caterpillar and a butterfly are standing next to each other. And the caterpillar says, man, you've changed. And the butterfly claps back and says, yeah, that's the point. And I'm definitely putting in my own tonality into that because that's just the snarkiness kind of that I hear when I see it, especially now, regardless of becoming a mom or anything. You're just not the same person you were at 25 that you are now. Even if you're 26, it still stands. Just like you're not the same person at 25 that you were at 15 years old. There's just no way that one person could possibly just completely, entirely stay the same your whole life. You might have like these common threads that follow you throughout your life, for sure. There's always something like that. But generally speaking, we are always evolving. So it just feels really silly to me that the expectation or the norm for moms is to go back to who you were, rather thinking about it as moving forward, and other people asking about how or who you are now that you're a mom. Because even though we're always changing, this transition, specifically with motherhood, it's more like the gauntlet version of all of those identity shifts that we go through all of life. You go through school and changes, especially when you're in like K through 12 and figuring out who you are, and even more so then in college and figuring out your career path, what you want to do with your life, But becoming a mom, it's way more pronounced. It's this whole huge life transition with so many different layers and facets, all just culminated into this one moment where you have this cute little potato, and it's faster usually and more sudden and intense than, some of those changes that we might experience in our childhood and teenagehood and all of that. And especially, and I've seen this with some of my friends, especially if you weren't exactly planning on becoming a mom in the moment that you did, or as soon as you did, or something, that identity shift can feel even more violent because there is a serious grief in losing your old life and your old schedule and old sense of self. And we need to have that moment for ourselves, regardless of whether your baby was completely planned and right on quote unquote time, or if it was completely unexpected to have a baby when you did. I just want every woman to hear this. Grieving that woman does not make you a bad mom or like you're resenting motherhood or you regret the decision. It does not mean anything like that. It literally just means that you're a human being undergoing your own rebirth. And you really got to let go of who that old version of you was. You got to let it burn so that, like, this metaphorical phoenix within you can rise. If you know anything about phoenixes, I don't know how you properly would pluralize that. I think I just made up about 5 different words of my own. The phoenix is reborn from the ashes of all of its previous selves. So like literally moms are the epitome of a phoenix where you've had all of these different versions of yourself that have come and gone in your life, and really becoming a mom is not necessarily the pinnacle, but it is probably the most intense version of perishing and rebirthing that we've been through up to this point in our lives. And it can happen with every single kid because then how you live and mother with one baby is going to be totally different than with 2 or 3, or at that point I've heard that one more just doesn't really matter. So maybe at that point your intense rebirths kind of like soften a little bit. But regardless, the loss and the grief is real, and we don't talk about it enough. And it's not normalized by any means to have that time, even if you're well aware of it and you know that it's coming, to just sit and love on who you were and let her go. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with needing that time and space to do that or struggling through that process. There are so many moments of potential moments of grief in motherhood. So many. There's like 4 of them that just popped into my head, but especially around our identity is a huge one. So then the second truth that I want to talk about is shifting priorities are certainly not a lack of ambition. They are an increase in clarity, so to speak. I see this a lot with women who were high achievers in their careers before kids that, just one like borderline extreme example is that maybe you wanted to be a partner at a law firm and you were so in on that path, so dedicated, but then you have kids because that was also part of your plan. But the math of your life changes to something that maybe you weren't really anticipating beforehand. And you start thinking about the cost of childcare, which in the United States is high enough to make anybody second guess their career choices. and you're looking at the time you spend at work versus the time you spend at home, and you're doing this whole mental audit or like actual legitimate audit of your life and career, and you realize that if you're going to be away from your kids all day to go to work, that it better be something that actually lights you up really damn well. Or there is some other very important reason, probably most likely financial, to stay in the job you have. That even though maybe childcare costs is what it is in the United States, that you still make enough for it to kind of balance the scales, so to speak, and continue working for the betterment of your like family's financial situation. Everybody's got their thing, everybody's got their why, but if becoming a mother doesn't have you kind of like reassess and look at those motivations and costs, benefits, all of that kind of stuff, at least briefly, then honestly, I'd be really surprised. I'm sure every mom has had at least some glimmer of that kind of moment. And having the doubt of whether it is worth it, your career, and debating or considering maybe making a career change or completely leaving what you have, whatever version it is, it can be made out to feel like, oh, she's lost her edge, she gave it up for motherhood, which the second one, sure. Maybe a lot of women do give up their careers for motherhood, but that doesn't mean that she's lost her edge. That doesn't mean anything. It's just a woman who's reevaluating her values. And some women, they decide they don't want that law firm partnership anymore, or that they just want to scale back, or they want to completely pivot to something entirely different. Or some women just say, like, yeah, you know what? I've thought about it, and I do still want that partnership. Go on with your bad self. No matter what your decision, there is nothing wrong with it. And there's this ridiculous narrative around mom guilt and mom shame, especially even heavier than just guilt, that especially in the United States, again, I can't speak for other countries, but I'm sure there's some version of this that on one hand, you get made to feel guilty and shameful if you're debating leaving your career for your family in some way, shape, or form, changing your career, changing your goals and ambitions for your family. Like, look at that, left her career to go be dedicated as a mom. You know, there's all the statistics about how many women leave the workforce when they become a parent versus men. It's for a reason. We can talk about that another day. Versus then also it's a double-edged sword where you get that kind of shame. But then on the flip side, if you decide to stay in the workforce in whatever capacity, even if it's part-time, versus making a change that means you are maybe more of a stay-at-home mom or just working from home, scaling back, whatever, then there's this guilt that, interesting, you're gonna have somebody else raise your kids for you at daycare? Like, what? So no wonder we're all so messed up and so indecisive and get in this spiral of this fear of judgment, because people may or may not think these things of you if you just became a mom, if you change your career path or whatever, as if raising these tiny little humans to be good people who are going to do good things in this world is any less important than whatever the heck you're doing in your career right now. So overall, I just feel like we really got to stop apologizing for our priorities shifting. It is what it is. There are so many women going through the same thing and realizing that our time is so much more valuable now than it ever has been when you're a mom, and wanting to spend it on something meaningful, whether that means it's at home with your kids or in your career that you had or some version of both. That is not giving up, losing your edge, or neglectful to your family. None of that. Nothing that anybody is trying to make you feel. It is just a sign of growth and change. That's all. Your family's evolving, you're evolving, everything's evolving around you. And I mean, there's plenty of women who do just continue their life, have a baby, go on maternity leave, and then go back to work. And most things are the same. But I guarantee you that even the woman who goes right back to her career, kind of more or less exactly how it was beforehand, her experience is still extremely different. And the final truth that I really want to spend a little bit more time on is that taking any of these actions for yourself is what I call, from my like psychology and health education background, a protective factor for you and your family. And there's all of these things that we come up with that we tell ourselves that I'll do something for me when the kids are older. I will go after this vision, this dream, this goal when we have more money, when we have more time, when I feel ready. Insert literally anything. And within all of those, there is some form of fear. Just going to name it the way that it is. And within each one of those, there's a multitude of possibilities because we're all just different. We're all very multifaceted creatures. But let's be real, specifically around like, I'll do that when I feel ready. You weren't ready to be a mom, were you? Probably not. At least not in maybe the way that you were hoping for. You were maybe mentally ready, like, yes, it's my time. I, wanted to become a mom around this time of my life. But there's usually something that you're just like, no, not yet. Or just in general, you can't even actually fully prepare yourself for what's about to happen in your life. So the whole readiness thing is just a complete myth. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. Clarity does not come from sitting around and thinking. It comes from taking action, and even small little steps towards whatever it is that you're looking to do can create more confidence within you to keep going and kind of create that momentum. And especially in conversation with our partners, this whole conversation brings to mind Eve Rodsky's book, Fair Play. Recently, just finally finished it. I had been in the middle of it for quite a while. That was not a pun intended for my show name. But I definitely will dive deeper into a review of this book later because it really does relate so much to what I do with ambitious moms. But Eve has this concept of unicorn space. And it's that time for a hobby, a business, a creative outlet that has nothing to do with your kids or your spouse and typically makes like a bigger impact in the world. It is not the quote unquote self care of going to get a mani pedi or a massage or whatever that looks like. Unicorn space can involve social time, but not usually. Unicorn space is really this thing that like fills your soul cup, so to speak. It could be volunteering. Doesn't mean that you have to make money from it. Could be lots of things, but she really emphasizes the need for both partners in the relationship, not just the mom, although it's a little bit more emphasized because usually moms end up being the default parent. So carving this unicorn space out for yourself and advocating for it can certainly have protective factors around your mental health. We see so much struggle in our fellow mom community around postpartum mental health and the whole identity collapse and everything that I've already talked about. And I mean, I think if you talk to any mom who's gone through all of this process, that she would wholeheartedly agree that having something that is just yours is vital, honestly, to your well being, obviously, but then the ripple effect being your partner and your family. The happier you are, the happier they are all going to be. Going out and taking even just a few hours a day or a week, whatever it looks like, to have your own time and do your own thing. Again, like I said in the beginning, like I would go out and photograph a session, a proposal, or a wedding. And even though it can be exhausting to take that time and it can feel like is the effort of like coordinating logistics and childcare if you need it and all of that stuff worth it? Yes, dude. Yes, it is. You need that time for yourself. Otherwise, you just end up getting completely consumed by motherhood. And then you have this introspective moment of like just looking around and where did I go? I've lost myself to motherhood. And if that's not motivating enough to do something for yourself, then maybe this will be that your kids are watching. Whether we notice it or not, or whether they're really conscious of what they're seeing. When you start to embrace your ambitions, they see a woman who knows how to set boundaries, who knows how to advocate for herself and her own fulfillment. They see the initiative that you take. They see your work and your dedication and your commitment to something that you love. And you aren't taking time away from them. You are modeling for them what it looks like to be a whole, powerful human being who can love her life at home and love on her family so hard, but then can go and do something that she loves that makes other people around her better, whatever way that that looks. You're showing them that it's okay to have a fire that belongs only to you, that it doesn't need to involve them or your partner. And speaking of fire, I'm bringing my own into 2026. I truly believe that I was put on this planet. I was born to, in some way, shape, or form, relieve pain and suffering, especially in women who feel like they've disappeared into motherhood. I help you listen to that little voice in the back of your head, which is your intuition. I imagine her like a character in your brain, like Inside Out, and she's a fabulous, glittery little thing, just waiting for the chaos from joy, sadness, anger, etc., to quiet down a little bit so she can step up and tell you what's next. Sometimes she tries, roll with me here in the metaphor. Sometimes your intuition tries to talk to you through all of the chaos that is life. And you hear it, you get little niggles of it here and there, but really, and we'll talk about this in another episode soon, giving yourself that space and time to quiet down the chaos and give your intuition that space to come through and actually share with you what is truly on your heart that maybe you've been having a hard time articulating. That's when you'll get some of that clarity. Again, those little action steps, just taking 5-10 minutes in the morning or at nap time or after bed, whatever works with your energy best, can make all the difference in suddenly feeling like, yeah, I've thought about such and such thing for so long. I think I'm going to go look into this kind of community engagement opportunity, like volunteering, or I'm going to try to figure out like, what do you need to do to become such and such business person type, whatever. So over the next few weeks, probably longer than that, maybe even few months, little by little, I'm taking the time to share the actual foundation of what I do as a mindset and business coach. I'm going to get into the why of things and the how of all of this rebirthing of ourselves. Going to talk a little bit more about the let them theory from Mel Robbins. Fabulous book. If you have not read it, listened to it, whatever, even on her podcast, or plenty of other people have done like YouTube videos and stuff about it, I would go check it out. I'm going to talk about getting tactical with the mental load, division of labor at home, because that's a huge obstacle I see with the women that I work with, is feeling like they can't take the time for themselves because if they do, then their house is going to fall apart. So common, and for the most part, very true, but it doesn't mean it's impossible to resolve so that you have your unicorn space. And we're going to look at why taking all of these tiny little messy actions that you feel like aren't making any difference, still doing them right now in the middle of the chaos is really the only way to find the clarity that you're looking for. And you don't have to wait till the kids are in school or till you have more money or you magically feel ready for yourself again, because you're not starting from scratch. You're starting from experience. You have so much to give. You're a woman who's walked through the fire and come out with this individual perspective that the world really needs. It's time to stop smothering the fire within and start using it to fuel whatever is next for you. So all of that and more to come in however many episodes it takes me to get through all of that. But for today, that is where I'll leave you with that. As always, thank you so much for listening to In the Middle of It. I'm Erin Leach, and this is your reminder that you are more than a mom. And the world is waiting for the woman that you're becoming to finally show up. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of your day with me here in the middle of it. If something we talked about today has sparked a little light for you, I'd love for you to help me pass that on. The best way to do that is to head over to your podcast player, hit follow, and leave a 5-star rating or review. I know it probably sounds like a small thing, but it's actually how we make sure more women find these conversations and realize that they are not alone in their own messy middle. But I wouldn't even stop there. If you have a friend, or maybe even your mom, who is navigating her own season of growth right now, shoot her a quick text with this episode. And just a simple, like, hey, I thought of you. That can mean so much to her. And if you're feeling extra fancy, or you just want to say hi, take a screenshot, tag me at I'm Erin Leach, and share it to your stories. I love seeing who's listening and actually connecting with you guys over Instagram or TikTok. It's just at Erin Leach, because together we're really just creating a trail for each other, right? And reshaping how we show up for ourselves and the women around us. I can't wait to chat with you more in the DMs. I'll be right back here with you next week.